Hey, Jeff Callahan here, founder of Become More Compelling. Welcome to another episode of Become More Compelling Radio. On the podcast today, my guest is Nick Gray. You might know him from Museum Hack. That's one of the really popular things. It's a company he built and sold. But he's got a book out that just came out called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. And what's awesome about this book is it outlines in very, very good detail how to go about hosting a 2-hour cocktail party. So a small gathering, we're talking 15 people, and building your network of weak ties. So people that, are acquaintances and strengthening those relationships. I'm 4 chapters in and I already love this book. And I can tell you, if you are someone who maybe you just moved to a new city and you're looking to grow a social circle, maybe you're in your 30s and you want to branch out and meet some new people. Well, Nick goes through extreme detail, which I love in this book. And everything from like why you shouldn't have chairs at your party to just the name cocktail party, how to end the party gracefully, all these little details like reminder messages. We get into all kinds of stuff. And so he really outlines how to throw a successful small gathering. He outlines it in extreme detail, and this book is absolutely worth checking out. In the show notes in the description, I've got a link to Amazon where you can pick up his book. And I've also got a link to party.pro, which is Nick's website for the book. And in the show notes on my blog, there's a couple of links to some great resources that Nick has about throwing a party. So you're going to want to check that out. That's on becomemorecompelling.com/blog. So without further ado, let's get into this conversation with Nick. There's so much awesome stuff packed into this interview. I am so excited to share it with you. Today, we're going to be talking about how to host an amazing party. But Nick, I want to ask you a question to kick things off here. So in your about page on your website, I saw where your 30th birthday was at a museum. You just had your 40th not long ago at a water park where you rented out an entire water park. You went down slides and the whole thing. Do you have a plan for your 50th birthday yet?
I want to have my 50th birthday at like a Costco or at a Waffle House. And I think that I set up so many big expectations for my other stuff that if I keep trying to make it bigger and bigger, I'm going to drive myself crazy. These days, I just want to hang with my friends and not make it too fancy.
Nice. Just make it a Costco and then you do like a Waffle House run. I like it.
Yep. Gotta get that $1.50 hot dog at Costco.
That's right. So Nick, I told you a second ago, I'll tell you again, I've read your entire book yet, but I've read some of it. I love what I've read so far, mainly because it is so actionable. If you would, for people that don't know about you, give us a little brief tweet storm bio of who is Nick and how did you go from someone who was maybe a little nervous around hosting your own party to like renting out a water park?
Yeah, absolutely. My goal for listeners and viewers today is to try to convince you why you should host a small party with 15 to 20 of your neighbors or colleagues, or even if you don't know that many people, I'll show you how you can meet them. But those small parties, I think more people should host them. And I think now's the time, because the last 2 years especially have been real lonely for people. I know they were for me. But I moved to New York when I was about 25, New York City. I grew up in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, and North Georgia. And I went to New York and I was pretty intimidated by all these people. The first time that I ever spoke to a stranger at a bar, where I went up to a group of people and somehow started a conversation and they spoke to me, I couldn't sleep that night. I was so excited. And I was like, I can't believe these people just talked to me. Because in the past, I would only meet people through friends or something like that, where it was like obviously a very warm introduction. And the idea to meet and talk to strangers was completely crazy to me. And I knew I wanted to make a friend group. I knew that silly phrase, your network is your net worth. You hear about that stuff, but it seems a little scammy. but I knew I wanted to make my own friends. And so that's kind of how I got started in New York. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And it's funny. There are quotes about the 5 people you hang around with, or you're gonna act like a little bit of a sponge. I've heard the phrase too. If you hang around the barbershop long enough, you'll get a haircut, something like that. So like, if you want to sort of live quote unquote your best life, paint it on the wall or whatever, like find people that are kind of on your same path, right? And hang out with them, build relationships with them. I'm with you too. Like that network and net worth thing. I always think of the business card scene in American Psycho, where they're all comparing like, oh, his is embossed and it has bone, and you're sliding across the table. It's like, no, a lot of networking literally is just being a cool person and building relationships. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
love that approach.
Yeah. And folks that you've told me about the people who listen to your content, who listen to this podcast or watch this video, they're interested in self-improvement and they want to learn how to do new things. That already puts them in like the top 1%. So
Yeah.
this is a skill, like social, like nobody teaches adults how to make new friends. And after college, it's quite difficult. And as we get older, we spend the same time with the same people. And I think I've got a way to shake that up a little bit.
Cool. And that was a perfect segue. So walk us through kind of the beginning phases of, like, say I just moved to town. I don't have I'm on a spacewalk. I've been cut off and now I'm floating through space as a 30 something year old. How do I start to build that social group through hosting parties?
So my book really works well for somebody who potentially has, let's say, 5 friends. And I would say that I struggle a little bit. If you have absolutely 0 friends, it's a little bit harder for you. But I'll give some ideas for those people who are literally brand new to town. One is you can make one friend with somebody who has a lot of friends, and you can ask if they would be willing to co-host an event with you. And that is a ultra life hack, because then you get to bring the fundamentals from my book and share that with their friends. Some other things, I'm sure you've heard all these things, like join an intramural sports league or join a sports team. The one hack to that I heard that I thought was funny from somebody who read my book, his name is Seth in New York. And Seth said, my hack was I joined a kickball team. And why do you think he joined that? He said, because kickball has the largest team sizes for the most amount of people that he could meet. And they usually all go out for a drink when the game's over. And he said, I was intentional to do it on kickball because it was the most number of people that I could meet. And then there's other stuff that a lot of people tell you, go to a meetup, join a club, get in a church group, things like that. So my general advice is probably not much more helpful than the same advice that a lot of people say. But here's the difference. Why does somebody want to be your friend? Why does somebody want to get to know you more? You've got to be doing something interesting. And when you host an event, that makes you interesting, because the secret is everybody wants to know someone who organizes events. Everyone wants to be invited to a party. It's like a gift, whether they're too busy or not. I can even tell you, for me as a single straight male, even the hottest woman in my entire town will appreciate being invited to a party. She may not come, but she will appreciate being invited to a party, because it's a vote of confidence that they're a good person and you think they are, so you've invited them. And so that's my hack for how you can hack your social life, is to start to host these small events that I call the 2-hour cocktail party. Now, I want to say right now that it's not about the alcohol. I don't even drink alcohol myself. There's not a single drink recipe in my book, but that phrase cocktail party, like, what do you think of when you think of cocktail party? What are some of the first things that come to your mind?
In my mind, it's low pressure, right? It's not like a rager it's gonna like blow up my entire week. It's just like, oh, a 2-hour cocktail party. Anyone can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's low pressure. And it's not like, I'm going to say this, it's not like a dinner party. Because if you meet somebody at the grocery store and you say, hey, I'm randomly, right? You have 30 seconds to talk with them. And then you say, hey, I'd love to invite you to a dinner party. That's a big ask. That's basically inviting them out it's a big ask. But if you're like, hey, some friends and I are hosting a cocktail party, can I send you the invitation? That is a very good way to meet new people. And in my book, I show you how to guarantee that that will be a successful event. But first, I just want to start this conversation with trying to say the benefits of how to convince, because I think you have to convince people. And I've struggled with that. What's the best way to let people know that this works for anybody, especially those who've never hosted something before?
Yeah. And one of the things that I really like about your book is everything seems so attainable. Like it's impossible to read it and not think about, of course I could do that. The gears are already starting to turn where it's like, yeah, I would invite this person, this person, this person. Here's what I would do here.
Yeah.
And that to me, just knowing what I know in my audience is ambitious overthinkers. And so typically they like to get as much information as possible and think about
Yes.
all contingencies and everything. It's like,
Yes.
no, you know what? When you get about 70% of the information, it's time to go and it's time to
Yes.
do, because you learn so much more by even hosting a party that, you know, was just a lukewarm success. Like, great. Now you've got a party. I think in your book, you call it a practice party.
Yep.
You got that first one done. And so you know so much more than when you had never hosted a party.
You're exactly right. And that, what I'm trying to teach people is hosting the act of gathering and bringing people together is something that you can do. Everybody wants somebody like that in their community. And the little secret is all you have to do is step up and host a party. And I wrote this book because a lot of the advice out there that I've seen for entrepreneurs and other sort of type A people is host a mastermind group or host a dinner party. And that is, I've hosted a lot. I've hosted dozens of dinner parties. And I found that cocktail parties for me, I got 80% of the benefits with about 30% of the work. I got much more benefits with much less work. And so that's what I hope to show. I've thought of literally every single detail, including what to say to the first people who arrive. We talk about that. That's called the awkward zone during the first 20 minutes of an event. I've talked about how you get people to leave at the end of your party, because this is not a chance for people to stay at your place for 4 hours and just hang out and get drunk. That's not what this is. So I'm happy to talk about all that stuff, but I do want to say something that you said is that we can tend to overthink this. And the first thing, you know, my book starts with a challenge that says, look, the first step is to pick a date. And the best day to throw a party is actually not the day that you probably think.
Yeah, this blew my mind when I read it in the book. I was like, oh, and yeah, so I'm so happy that you're talking about this.
I said I'd just love to hear your feedback on it too, but I think that you don't want to throw a party on a red level day. A red level day is what I say our Friday and Saturday nights, probably Thursday nights as well. Our red level day is 4th of July. Please do not listen to this or buy my book and think, I'm going to throw a 4th of July party.
Yep.
Red level days are socially competitive. They're days when people have other stuff going on. And my goal is for your first party to be a success. And I'm going to do a little quiz to you now. What do you think is the number one fear for somebody who's never hosted a party before?
Oh, I would think it would be, I'll throw it and no one will show up.
That's exactly right. I'll throw it and no one will show up. Or worse, I'll throw it and only 2 people will show up. And now they see me with this, right? Because if no one shows up, okay, fine. But if 2 or 3, so all of my party and my party method and formula is built on guaranteeing that you have an over 90% attendance ratio. And one of the ways that we do that is by doing, for example, one-to-one invitations. We don't mass text. We don't BCC. We don't click every single person on Facebook and event to the event. We're sending them one-on-one messages. Hey, Jim, I'm thinking of getting some friends together in 3 weeks on Tuesday night. Would you be able to come? So that's the day The day that you're going to host the party will only be a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night. These are green days when people do not usually have things going on. And it will be a 2-hour time block, generally after work.
Yeah.
So for a lot of my readers, it's 6 to 8 p.m., 7 to 9 p.m. What would it be there where you are? If you were going to host, what time would you do?
Yeah, like that 7 to 9 is pretty perfect, because 9 is like, okay, I can go home, I can feed my animals, I can go to bed.
Yeah. Yes. It's so funny because in New York, where I used to live, I lived in New York City for 13 years. I loved it, but now I live in Austin, Texas, and I love it here. But in New York, it was very much a 7 to 9, 8 to 10 environment. People stay up a lot later. Here in Austin, Texas, my friends are hosting happy hours from like 5 to 7. And I got here and I was like, don't you guys work? Like, how can you get to a party at 5 o'clock? But that's just how it is in certain places, right?
Yeah.
Anyhow, so that's the green level day. That's the hoping to try to convince you that if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, this is interesting, the very first step that you have to do is just set a date that's minimum 3 weeks away on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night. And you're going to set at least 3 weeks, because that gives you the party runway, which will give you enough time to invite and fill up your list. And it's just, yeah, I could talk about it all day. What's helpful?
Yeah. So you set a date, it's 3 weeks in advance. How soon are you trying to send out those invitations? Do you really want to give people, okay, I want people to have those 3 weeks because they may need to organize childcare if you're not hiring a babysitter for the party or whatnot?
Yeah. The 3 weeks is for you to lock in all the people that are going to come. This party does not take a lot of planning. It's not complicated and it's not expensive. You can do the whole thing for under $100. But that 3 weeks gives you time to invite people. And so your very first next step, before you even invite a lot of people, is you invite what I call your core group. And these are 5 people that you're trying to get to say yes to. That could be your neighbors. It could be your college buddies. It could be your work colleagues that you're very close with. But because your audience is like overachievers and overthinkers, I want to say, do not invite VIPs to this first party. Do not use this first party as a way to reach out. Oh my God, I'm trying to get this client for my business. I got to invite them. Don't do that. Yeah. Because the first one is a low stakes affair where you want to be able to make mistakes and you don't want to feel like high pressure, right? You don't want to. I have a lot of single guys who read my book and they use these parties not to meet women, but just to show that they have friends and invite some people to. And you don't want to do that to invite somebody that you're going to feel nervous or embarrassed around. Your first party is a low stakes affair. And you're going to invite people like your neighbors and their significant others that can just fill the room and make you feel like, okay, this is my practice party.
Yeah. I love that, because anytime you're trying to do anything new, it could be working out for the first time, whatever it is, make it okay to fail. I put fail in air quotes because it's not a failure. It's a learning lesson, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that way, the next time you do it the second time, you're going to be you'll be more comfortable. The end result, like that first party may be awesome. The second party may be even more awesome, but that second party, you're going to feel better. And that's what's important.
Oh yeah. And so that's the first step, right? Is get those 5 people that'll say yes. These are people that'll laugh at your jokes. They'll show up on time and they're not going to embarrass you. After you get those first 5 people who say yes, and I'm getting into the tactical details. Is that all right?
I like it. Let's go.
As soon as you get those first 5, then you're going to make a page to collect people's RSVPs. There's a lot of platforms online like Paperless Post, Evite. Have you used any? Is there any that you like or that you?
I haven't used any in recent memory. Like,
yeah.
And I was going to ask you about this because I feel like we're recording this in 2022. Like 10 years ago, it would have definitely been Facebook, right?
Right.
And I don't feel like that's the case anymore.
I agree with you. I feel that, yeah, I don't know what to say about it, but I will say
like people just see it and they're like, just another notification.
Exactly.
But especially if there's like, I would assume on these RSVP things, like you can make your own custom message for individuals. And so it feels
Yeah.
very personal, because that's what I think is going to lead to people wanting to come, is you want to make them feel special. Because that's the entire point. Like, they obviously are special if they get to be invited to your party. So make them feel special.
And the way that we make them feel special is by inviting them with a text message or an email, and not by blasting. Have you ever gotten a Facebook event invitation? It's like,
Yeah. What do you do? It's just like, whatever.
right. Or you see the number, the bad ratio, which is like 3 people say yes, 2 people say maybe, 97 invited. And you're like, this seems kind of weird. So anyhow, by the way, that's one thing that we'll do with those first 5 is we're going to create a page for people to RSVP. The service that I like as of now, when we're recording this, June 2022, a service called Mixily, Mixily. Some other people like Paperless Post. I have a whole list of the ones that I like on my website, but you're going to get those first 5 to go to the RSVP page and RSVP and commit. And that is going to create social proof. So when you invite other people, then they are going to see that there's at least 5 people plus you. There's 6 people going, and that is going to be good news.
Yeah.
So that's the next step. And then once you get those 5 people, now your party is happening, and now you start to invite that slightly wider circle, the new neighbors who you haven't met yet, the new person at the office, things like that, until you get 15 who say yes. And that's the goal, is to host an event for about 15 people.
Yeah. And so say you get those 15 yeses. If you want 15 yeses, how many do you think you would have to invite? Are we talking trying to invite 20 and then 15 say yes?
Even for my parties, and I've hosted hundreds of parties, I have to invite at least 10 to 20 more than the actual number that I want to come.
Yeah.
And that's because people are busy, or people have other stuff going on. Even though we're hosting it on a Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday night, 3 weeks away, people still have things going on. So I do have to invite more than the number that I want. And that's the important thing for my party. You're trying to get 15 to say yes, not try to invite 15 to say yes. And here's why we leave that 3 weeks. It's because the first week, you're going to get those 5 people that'll all say yes. And then you can get a couple more. So maybe get up to 10. Well, now you have a solid 2 weeks to get 5 more people. And most people will be shocked that when you have an event coming up on a calendar, the interesting people who you don't think twice about that you bump into, that now you're like, oh, my friends and I are having a little cocktail party. Can I invite you? It's the barista at your store. It's a cool person you bump into at somebody else's event. It's just incredible how once you host events, you start to collect all these new friends.
Yeah. And I really like that, because one of the things that kind of makes you interesting and helps you have a reason to get to know people is by having regular events. It could be like a meetup that you go to, but it could absolutely be a party that you host. And if you're trying to host a party every month or so, then you're always going to have a party in the pipeline. You only have 1 week there where you don't have something scheduled, but something's coming up. And so it's easy to have a reason to get together with new people. And one of the things that I talk about is something called the strategic yes. And it's the more you can say yes to events, the more events come your way, right? So being able to have an event that you can extend an invite to so someone else can say yes, great. That takes that relationship where it might just die on the vine if you're like, oh, well, it's cool to meet you. And then you've got their number, but you never text them. We met each other and then we hung out a week later, and you're deepening that relationship almost immediately.
Wow. Can you talk more about that strategic yes?
Yeah. So typically it's kind of flipped the other way, where it's like, if someone's extending invites to you and you say no, that circle just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, because people don't like being told no. And so those invites at work will dry up, or that invite from your friend group, they'll start to dry up, because people just don't like to be let down like that. But the more you say yes, especially if you're moving to a new city or you're starting a new job, even though you may not quite feel like going out to that event, like you just say, okay, for the next month, I'm going to say yes as much as possible because I want those invites to keep coming my way. And so it sort of builds a flywheel where it's easier to get invited to stuff because you went to stuff, and it builds that sort of the virtuous cycle.
I love that. And I'll add on a pro tip or a hack for somebody who hosts events like myself. I would say, and maybe you know this and you advise people, that if you're getting invited to things and you want to know how can I be a great guest or how can I make it easy, I suggest arriving on time or even a minute early, because many times we may think, oh, the event starts at 7. I'm a little bit socially anxious. I don't really know. I'm going to show up at 8 o'clock. I don't want to do this, that, or the other. For myself, it is way more intimidating for me to show up to a crowded party where I feel like I'm walking into something and I'm like, oh my God, it's loud. I have all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? Sort of.
Yeah, there's too much cognitive load, right? Like
Yes,
it's like,
yes.
the music's loud. All these people seem to know each other. Well, they didn't know each other an hour ago.
Right.
Like show up early, and if you can show up a minute or two early, and I love the tip in your book about starting events at like 6:57 or something like that. That's great. You get to show up a little early, and then it feels sort of like, even though it's not your party, if you're going to someone else's party, you get to take a little bit of ownership.
Yes.
I've had some clients that are like, yeah, I was at my buddy's party and I was bartender for the night. And that I got to circulate and meet all these new people because they felt like sort of a host to that party.
100%. And that's in my book, actually. It's the idea of how you as a host can delegate duties to your early arrivals. And so I suggest for anybody listening to this, if you have slight social anxiety or if you don't know about going to events, show up on time. And when you get there, ask the host how you can help. And I love going to a party on time or slightly early because I get to see the party form around me and it gives me more confidence, and I get to start slower and build up the momentum of my own social skills, as opposed to walking into just this wall of people and noise. And that takes a lot. That's hard to shift gears like that.
Yeah. So what about like take the person who's like, okay, Nick, yeah, I want to host my own party, but I'm a little self-conscious about my house or inviting people in my house. Because I thought you had some really good thoughts in your book around just totally like sidestepping and reframing kind of house anxiety.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point about that reframing it. And I've helped over 55 people now host their first party. And for 97% of people, their house is the best place to host. Maybe if you live in a shared family situation where you're caring for maybe an elder family member and it's not possible. Maybe if you don't have an elevator and you want your house to be wheelchair accessible, maybe then home isn't. But for most people, the home is correct. And I'll give you the best example. The best example of somebody who thinks their home is not correct is someone who is perhaps an entrepreneur that projects an image of themselves that is perhaps slightly more successful than their living home situation. And they are embarrassed about the size of their house or the location or something. And the advice that I have to you about that is the act of hosting at home is such a vulnerable act that you actually create more emotional connection and buy-in with all of your visitors by welcoming them into your space. And they will show up to your house and they will not look around and say, oh, this place is tiny, and leave your house and start a rival house party. They're not going to do that.
It does not happen.
It does not happen. I worked with a woman in New Jersey who wanted to host her first party, and she lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. And the reality was, she said, I am a little embarrassed that I live in an apartment and many of my friends have a house. And for years, she had been saying, I'm going to host when I get the house, when I get the house. I work with somebody else who said, we're going to host when we get the pool. As soon as we get the pool put in, then we're going to host. I said, they're not coming for your house or your pool. People don't come over for that. They come over for you, and they come over to meet people. and it's not about the fancy thing. So it is a mindset, and nobody's going to dig through your guest bedroom and find that that's where you stored all your junk. I keep junk around my house. So you know what I do? I take some of these plastic tubs, or I take an Amazon box, and I literally pick up all the junk in my house and I put it in one of those boxes and I throw it in a closet, and my house looks tidy for at least a couple hours.
Yeah.
My
And
house is never cleaner than the 10 minutes before a party.
oh yeah, like sort of pre-COVID, when we would have people over, like it was a great excuse for us to just do a nice clean real quick, where it's just like,
Right.
oh, everything looks great. And even for a while we had a housekeeper that would come and clean. And it's funny because I would clean before they would get here.
Right.
Like, I don't want them to see, like, and it's their job to like come over and clean. Like, no,
Right,
I'm
right.
over here cleaning as their car's pulling in. But yeah, there are a lot of options. Like if you have a little disposable income, like hire a cleaner to come over, just clean it up so that you don't have to, so that you can go do something else related to the party.
Right. There's a 19-step pre-party checklist that I have online.
Oh man.
That any of your viewers or listeners can download. The website is www.party.pro, P-R-O. So www.party.pro, and has a checklist of simple things you can do, like wipe down your curtains, put a candle in the bathroom. Here's something that I learned. Put away your bath towels that you use after you shower. You don't want people to be tempted to dry their hands on those. You don't want to shower with that afterwards. They don't want to dry their hands on those.
Yeah.
And so just put them away. So it's not even, so it's in the bathroom, and just hide those things. Simple stuff like that, that we can drill into the logistics and the extreme tactical nature, which the later sections of my book, but just the mental idea of hosting at home. And so briefly, I'll tell you why it's going to work better for you. Number one, it's incredibly generous when you host at home. It's vulnerable and it's generous. How is it generous? There's no tab. If you're thinking, oh, I'll host it at a bar, well, now people have to pay for their drinks. They're not that thankful of you. Yes, you got people together, but you didn't give them anything. Versus now, when you host at home, you get to give them a drink. It's small, but what's the cost of a drink at a bar? $5, $10? You're giving them these small gifts that for you, they cost much less. Anyhow, so it's very generous, and you get to control the environment. When you're out at a bar, there's all these other people. Who's part of the party? Who's not part of the party? So I feel very strongly that this type of event has to happen at home. It's more intimate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when people arrive, you're handing out name tags, correct?
Yes, I'm very passionate about this as well.
Okay. I'm going to give you a soapbox, and you can stand on it, and you can shout from the mountaintops about name tags.
So we have to think, when we invite people, that we're trying to make it a safe space for the introverts and for shy people. And name tags help with that so much, by removing just one thing of having to memorize. Oh my God, there's 15 people at this party. What was their name? And you're trying to be present in the conversation. And you're also like, oh my God, I forgot this person's name. I'm so embarrassed. I hope they don't use my name, and then I have to use their name. Name tags also serve as a visual unifier for everybody at your party, that you're all on the same team, that this isn't a party where there's cliques. Can you imagine you go to somebody's house, you don't really know anybody but the host? You're like, oh, do they all know each other from work or something? Well, now the name tag creates the safe space that it's okay to go up and speak to new people. And it's just like wearing a jersey on a sports team. When you all wear that same one, you feel together, like you're a part of something. Yes, it's cheesy. Yes, it's silly to do it at a house party. But the way that you'll get around any resistance in doing it is mentioning the name tag in the event RSVP. And I even do it in the invitation sometimes. So I'll say, come hang out, meet some new friends. I'm having a party where we're going to have some drinks. I'll have name tags because I'm bad with names, and we'll do a few rounds of icebreakers so we all can meet some new people. I use this, and I set the expectation in the invitation, in the reminder messages, which we have to talk about that. But I set this expectation so that when somebody shows up, there is no surprise that there will be name tags. And there is zero resistance when you set the expectations. You get the resistance when you spring it on them, when you surprise them. Hey, we're going to do name tags. Like, what? Why am I doing name tags, right? It feels weird if they don't know.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a huge fan of setting good expectations, and the more times you mention it, the easier it's going to be. So name tags are an absolute must.
Right.
And Nick, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we booked the 4:45.
I'm
I don't have a
flexible. I'll
hard
talk
stop.
about this all day for your
Okay,
listeners, because
cool.
if they're like what you said they are, where they are strategic thinkers and where they are serious thinkers and they think about stuff a lot, I tell you, I have planned to every little minute detail of how you can throw a successful event. And
Yeah,
so I'd love to have people do that.
and truth be told, that's why you're talking to me right now, because I'm like, oh my God, someone else like me, or someone who my readers will absolutely love. So where we're at in our party, we've got our core 5.
Yeah.
We've got
Yeah.
the additional ones that add up to 15. We've got our name tags. So something that I loved in your book was the 2 rounds of icebreakers. You may
Yes.
do more, you may do less, but like having those 2 rounds of icebreakers as people arrive to the party help to just kind of level everything out. So I would love if you
Yes.
could talk about that.
So here's the thing. Have you ever been to a party and you don't know who to talk to? There's all these people there and you're like, okay, I guess I will talk to the people that I bump into. That, like, now it's up to me to go up and just guess, like, okay, this person looks interesting, I guess. Or like, while I'm getting a drink, I'll make small talk next to the person. And that's fine. That's what I call like unstructured time. And that happens, and that will still happen at this party. But at my party, you'll use 2 to 3 icebreakers where you very quickly circle everybody up. And it's like a short survey of the room. And it's not to see like who's more important. It's just to give you an idea of who maybe you want to talk to, and to give your guests an excuse to start some new conversations. However, there's also a secret feature of the icebreakers. The icebreakers allow your guests to end their conversations. Have you ever been at a party and you get stuck talking to somebody and you're like, I'm done with this conversation. Like, I don't want to be an ass, but like, I'm done.
And you're thinking at the time, like, I'm going to die of old age in this conversation. Like, this
Yes.
is my final resting place, is this
Yes.
conversation.
Yes, this is it. Well, when you lead these icebreakers and you make these interruptions during your party, you give your guests the opportunity to graciously end those. And new hosts oftentimes mentally struggle with this. They're like, why do I want to interrupt? Look at everybody, they're talking. Well, I'll tell you what, the best conversations, the good ones, they will reform later on. Some will say, okay, that's fine. Like, let's do the icebreaker. And then those really good ones, they will find each other out and they will come back together.
It's kind of like just a little mini party reset. Okay, everyone, we're going to do an icebreaker in 1 minute,
Yeah.
or something like that. And everyone's like, oh,
Yes.
and some people are like, oh my God, thank you. Because you just gave
Yes.
him a life preserver in an ocean of a rambler.
Right. That's exactly what it is. I love that idea of a party reset. That's kind of what this is. And you give people an excuse to graciously end. So I oftentimes do that. I'll make a short announcement. I'll say, hey, everybody, we're going to do a round of icebreakers in about 3 minutes. If you want to grab a drink, grab a refill, use the restroom, 3 minutes, we're going to do a quick round of icebreakers. So at the party itself, it's a 2-hour event. You'll lead 3 icebreakers. The first one is about 10 to 15 minutes after your first guest arrive, when there's only maybe 4 or 5 people there. And you do this practice icebreaker to get out of the awkward zone. The awkward zone is that first 10, 15, 20 minutes when there's not enough momentum. There's not enough people there to have that energy in the room. And so when there are about 5 people, you'll lead around icebreakers, and that literally breaks the ice to get people to start some new conversations. The second is the same exact icebreaker as the first time. My favorite one, I can talk about that too if you want to know, but you lead the same icebreaker, but now with everybody at your party. So for your party that starts at 7, you'll do that second icebreaker at about 7:30. And then you'll do the third and final icebreaker about 45 minutes later or so, about 8:15, 8:20. And you'll lead that last icebreaker And that one's a little bit longer. People are warmed up. They've made some new connections. They're ready to be a little bit more giving in their answers. And you also do a group photo at that time. I go into all these details, exactly when to do the group photo, which icebreakers to use, and things like that.
Nice. I love kind of the overarching structure of like most of the party is going to be organic and people are going to be talking, but you've got sort of these chapters to the party where you're like,
Yes.
okay, we do this, then we do this, then we do the picture. And it gives people like that good memory of like, yeah, it was probably unlike any party that they've ever been to.
That's what I hear from people. I hear that from a lot of people who host my party. And I've worked with 55 other people so far. I'm trying to get to 500. That's my goal. But
Nice.
55 people have read my book and they've hosted their first party. And they hear that from, they say, wow, I've never been to a party like that. That was so much fun. And what people start to ask is, when is your next one?
Yep.
And what I'm trying to show people is anybody can do this. And you will be the type of person where people ask you, when's your next party? Like, just think what would your life be like that if people were asking you, begging you to host another party?
Yeah, like something that you mentioned in the book is, and I wrote a note here, serendipity, right? Like you've had people get job offers through parties, clients, connections.
Yeah.
So there's a concept called I think it's called like the surface area of luck. People have said this a bunch of different ways. James Clear has a really good quote that's like, the person who only takes one shot, everything has to go right because they only got that one shot. The person takes 100 shots, yeah, they're going to score some points. Like it's going to happen. It's inevitable because they're putting forth effort and there's a lot of opportunity. And so for every party you throw, you never know who may come with a friend, could be anything.
Yes.
And you might meet, I know you're hoping for like your first marriage out of the parties that you've thrown. So people might meet their next spouse, their only spouse, the love of their life. They may meet an amazing business connection. They may just meet a really cool person who ends up being a lifelong friend. So that serendipity piece of it is worth trying it. If for no other reason, leave out the I want to build my social skills. That'll happen as a byproduct of this experience that you're creating for people. Think of the connections that you get to build over and over.
There was some research that showed that we find out about most new opportunities in life through a concept called our weak ties or our loose connections. These are more of our acquaintances than our friends. And the parties that I specialize in and that I teach people how to host are really to build your network of acquaintances. They're to nurture and build that, because new job opportunities, new investments, new romantic partners, new fun things to do, it's often these people that are on the tertiary, the edge of our network. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but it's those people that are not the closest ones to us.
Right.
But we find out about these new opportunities from these loose connections or these weak ties. And these types of parties are a great way for you to build your network of those people.
Cool. I love it. And so a couple of things I want to talk about with the time that we have. One is how to gracefully end a party, because one of the things that I cover with my students is how to kind of gracefully end a conversation, because having that exit strategy really helps add to the whole comfort of everything. And I thought you had a great strategy for having a smooth segue at the end of a party.
Yeah. I think just like the name tags, setting the expectation that your party will be a 2-hour event by setting in the event invitation both a start time and an end time. Have you ever been invited to like a Memorial Day barbecue or something, and it says it starts at 4:00 and there's no end time?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it starts at 4. I'm obviously not going to show up till 5. And then like, we probably won't eat till 6. And then like, God, it's going to go till like
this is the rest of my life.
This is the rest of my life. I'm going to die here. And so similarly, by setting the expectation in the invitation that you're hosting a 2-hour party, by leaving a start and an end time, people know that it's kind of, and so I will make an announcement 15 minutes before the scheduled end time. That's like a last call where I thank everybody for coming. And I'll say something like, hey, everybody, thank you so much for coming. it's 8:45. I said the party would go till 9. So if you want to grab a last drink, say hey to somebody new that you didn't get a chance to meet with, we'll start to wrap up here soon. And then around 9:00, I have a whole strategy that I mentioned this in my book in chapter 13 about at 9:00, you're going to turn the music down, turn the lights up, thank everybody again. There's a little activity. I do a little cheer, which sounds so ridiculous and so goofy, but I promise you it works, just like the harmonica that I talk about in the party. These things sound silly and they sound goofy, but they're memorable, and people will give you the space as a host. And so we'll do something, or you can just thank them for coming, and then kind of start to tidy up and people will make their way out. You could also, if people are still hanging around, play the song Closing Time.
Of course, that's why they wrote it.
That's why they wrote it, right? Just to give them really the hint, it is time to go.
Yeah, I love it. And that easy segue, like if people are still hanging out, like if you can suggest other venues that they might go to. I know that you wrote about that as well.
Yep.
But yeah, like cheesy stuff like a harmonica. It's memorable, and I guarantee you, no one's heard an announcement at a party with a harmonica before, and so
it works.
It adds to the whole experience, and I would imagine that it also helps you end on a high note, right? Instead of waiting for all the energy to be gone.
Yes, it's exactly that. It's ending your party like you want to pop a balloon. It's a difference between popping a balloon or letting the air slowly empty out of a balloon and get all saggy. You want to end it with intention. And many times there'll be an effort for somebody to say, oh, let's keep going on. Or my favorite is someone will say, dude, I haven't talked to you all night. Like, you're the host. I want to hang out. Come on, people are leaving. Let's talk. And a very specific tactical thing, because I recommend people for your first party, end it on time. Take time. Like, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so I'll tell people, if somebody is doing that and they're trying to talk to you at the end of your party when you want to end for your own self-care, you say, hey, I am so glad that you want to chat. I would love to catch up, but I need to clean up now and I need to get ready for work tomorrow. I would love, though, to connect. Can I call you tomorrow or maybe on the weekend? And can we have a phone call, or maybe can we meet up for a cup of coffee? And what you do is you acknowledge that person who wants to connect with you. And you say, I want this to happen, this connection. I just have to do it in the future because right now I'm doing. And I've used that more than 100 times. I've never had a negative reaction.
I love it. You're acknowledging the person's feelings and you're setting up some kind of plan.
Yeah.
That's it. I love it.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned a few minutes ago about I think it was the party reminders that you wanted to talk about. I think that might be a really good point, because I know there could be some anxiety of if I send out the invitations, how do I make sure that people come?
And that's the biggest thing, right? So much of my party planning handbook involves making sure that you're going to have a great attendance. And then 90% of the work is done, because the little secret is once you reach that magic space around 15 to 20 people, it's actually much less work for you as a host. And so one of the reasons I don't like dinner parties, because with 6 people, I have to do a lot of work. I have to carry the conversation. I have to feed everybody. I have to carry the whole night. With 15 to 20 people at your party, new conversations are forming. Nobody gets a chance to talk to every single individual. So there's a lot of new connections happening. Let's talk about the reminder messages real quick. For you to host a successful event and a party, you need everybody to show up. And for them to show up, you have to keep your event top of mind. And so you're going to send 3 reminder messages. The ones that I suggest and that I use is I send a message 1 week before the party, I send a message 3 days before the party, and I send a message the morning of the party. And in that reminder message, in the last 2, I include my secret weapon, which is called guest bios, that ramps up really the attendance ratio and the excitement, and it gives people new ideas on who to talk to. And if you'll allow me, that's the one thing that I will sort of ask people to send me an email about or something, and I'll send you the details. Or I have a beautiful blog, in-depth article that's on my website about guest bios and why for any event that you host, you need to be using them.
Yeah. And if you're good with it, I can include that link to that blog post in the show notes for sure.
Great.
And are you sending out these, is this emails that you're sending, or?
I like to send out emails. I think
Okay.
emails, I put everybody on BCC. I don't like to use the event platforms because oftentimes your messages will go into the promotions folder.
Right.
And so I do like to go in. All of the event platforms I suggest will allow you to download a CSV of all your attendees and their email addresses. And that's another reason that we collect RSVPs, to get people's email addresses. Some people like to do this on text message. I don't like to do the stuff on text message. I can't include all the relevant info. I don't want people replying back on a thread.
Right.
I like to send emails.
Cool. Yeah. Easy enough. So one final point that I wanted to bring up that blew my mind. As soon as I read it, I was like, well, duh, is why should you maybe throw away all the chairs in your house for the night of the party?
Sitting down is kryptonite to a successful event. And here's why. At a good event, you want it to be easy to go up and talk to new people. And whenever I go to something where people are seated, it's very intimidating to start and break into that conversation. And people get stuck in conversation. It's very hard to bump around the room, and to end a conversation when you're seated is even more difficult. And being seated really sucks the energy out of a room, and it makes your icebreakers go so much longer. A good icebreaker is a fast icebreaker. And so sitting down, while it can be very helpful for one-on-one conversations and for dinners and for a chance to build a deep relationship, for these types of parties where the goal is for your guests, by the way, I didn't even mention this, your party will be a success because all of your guests are going to get to meet so many new, interesting people, not from their social circle. So that's why this is a success. For people to come and attend this party that you'll host, they'll get to meet so many new people. And these days, it's very hard to meet new people. For adults, nobody teaches adults how to make new friends. Maybe you meet people at work,
Yeah,
but most people just don't meet a lot of new people.
I love it. And this completely turns the one of the objections to someone hosting at their house on its head. Oh, I don't have enough chairs. Well, good. You're in the
Yes.
perfect environment. In fact, the
Yes.
chairs that you do have, put them somewhere where the guests can't sit on them.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, that's the funniest thing. Oh, I can't have a party because I don't have enough chairs. That's perfect. Hide your chairs.
Hide them, chop them up.
Yeah.
So you've just given us so many great nuggets. Where can someone go to get your book, to learn more about hosting great parties?
Would be happy to share about this. I just launched my book. I'm going to hold up the cover of it here. It's called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. You can buy it online wherever books are sold. You can buy it in Kindle. I think it's about $7. You can buy this version. I have a satisfaction guarantee on the book. And if you buy this and you think that it's not valuable, then I'm happy to send you your money back. Send me an email. You can look me up online. I feel very strongly about this, but the name of the website, The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, my name is Nick Gray, and I built a whole website that lists some of the key concepts and articles and shows a bunch of case studies of other people that have read my book and hosted their party with photos of how the parties looked and things like that. You can find that at www.party.pro. And on that website too, you can download a 2-page PDF that lists both the checklist of 19 things to do before you host your first event and an executive summary that lists all the high-level things of my book. So download that. It's a free download, and I hope that you'll check out my book.
Yeah, and for anyone that's thinking about hosting a party, or they're listening to this and they're saying, yeah, I think I can do that. You can do it. Nick makes it as easy. I mean, the only thing easier would be like if Nick like inhabited your body and like moved you around, like took you to the grocery store and bought things. Like, this is as easy as it's ever going to get to host a party. And a lot of the fears or anxieties or objections you might have, Nick just takes some TNT and he blows them up. And
I've listed even the exact scripts and the exact text messages that I send to my friends and the exact reminder messages. They're all in the book. So you have the scripts of exactly what to say from 3 weeks before your party to invite the first person, to what to say, literally the script for the first people who arrive, and then to how to finish the party and how to close it on time.
I love it. Nick, is there anything else that you feel like I mean, there's probably a lot that we didn't talk about, but is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel like we should? Any final wisdom or tips when it comes to hosting a great party?
I think I just encourage your listeners to know that I moved to New York. I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't, as you hear me talking now, excited, and I can speak a lot about this. That wasn't how I started. I was not very social in high school or in college. I hardly had a girlfriend in college. And I now am somebody who just hosts events, and hosting parties and events is a skill, just like anything, that you can get good at. People aren't born natural hosts. They do it because they were raised in environments. I've hosted hundreds of parties now, and I've written down everything I've learned so that you don't have to make the mistakes that I did along the way. Like, spending too much on decorations, which doesn't matter. Nobody cares about that stuff.
I love it. Well, Nick, I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this, and I wish you nothing but success when it comes to your book. And I'll definitely report back when I have my own party.
Thank you. I can't wait. I can't wait to help you. It's going to be big.
Director, thinker, relator, socializer. Which one are you? Before you go, be sure to take this communication style quiz from Become More Compelling, and you'll get a custom report complete with specific tips based on your unique results. The link to the quiz is in the description. Go on, click it. I know you want to.